Welcome to another episode of Chad Sports Talk. As I know, my name is Chad. Take a dive into sports. And welcome pretty much to my last, at this time, of my what if thoughts or scenarios during for conference realignment. And this is the what if the entire Division 1 was geographically separated, aka regionalized. Now, I'll do this for FCS and FBS. I'll also kind of throw out some guidelines into this one. So with the FBS, all upcoming programs, so the 3 that got added will be included. Same thing with FBS, the ones that are getting added into the FCS level, those were included. So I'll go down some other scenarios here in a minute. But before I do that, if you could smash that thumbs up for me, especially like the content provide you, it really helps promote this channel out. And it really pleases you two gods. You can also subscribe. I check my analytics. Love you guys reviewing my work. I love you all for doing that. Not many of you subscribe. It doesn't cost you a dime. Helps me provide more entertainment value for you. Go over some of the guidelines of this scenario. Every conference was considered with the exception of the Ivy League. Due to the Ivy League's strict scheduling policies and no postseason, I've let those 8 programs offer their little island of their more academics and their athletics is secondary. The entire Pioneer Football League was considered. In case you don't know, the entire those schools don't offer scholarships to their football players, and all HBCU universities were considered as well. And from here on out, no conference is beyond 14 members, and the minimum requirement is 8. So you're not going to have the 16-member SEC. Sorry, wouldn't be prudent. If a state has multiple schools in that particular branch, they will all be in one conference and they'll not be split as separate ones. Like if you look at Texas in the FBS level, they're in the Big Ten, they're in the SEC, they're in the Conference USA, they're in the Sun Belt, they're in the American. Now they're all in one location. And they're trying to maintain as many rivalry games as possible. Unfortunately, when you start doing that, especially with that Texas scenario, you definitely will lose that Red River rivalry as a conference game. So that means it's going to be a non-conference matchup. So, and then kind of renew someone. But you'll see all that coming up. And also, if you look at these graphics when I pop them up, don't take the location where you see the primary logos for these universities as the exact location. It's kind of a generalization of where they could be at. Some of these universities are extremely close to each other, and I want you to be able to see the logos. So I don't want to make them too small and try to put them there exactly. So just kind of take that in consideration when looking into this. And let's go ahead and we'll start off with the FCS. And if you watch any of my other videos, it's always start out west and work my way east. It seems to be easier because there's fewer schools out west compared to the east. I don't know. That's what I just noticed, but I'll start out west in FCS level, Big Sky. This is basically what you see in the Big Sky now. There's a few tweaks. So you got Montana State, Idaho State, Eastern Washington, Portland State, Sacramento State, UC Davis, Cal Poly, Northern Arizona, Weber State. You're bringing back in Southern Utah. Welcome in Dixie State, a.k.a. Utah Tech, as they will be known on, I believe, July 1st of this year, 2022, and San Diego. Next up is Missouri Valley. The one thing you kind of know is a little oddball there. One is Northern Colorado. Yes, they should be in the Big Sky, but because of that 14-member limitation, they get moved over here to Missouri Valley with North Dakota State, South Dakota State, St. Thomas, that D3 school that got jumped all the way up to D1, Northern Iowa, Drake, Missouri State, Southeast Missouri State, Illinois State, Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, and Southern Illinois. And next up is a SWAC. This is the one of the smaller conferences. If you look at the quote-unquote 2021 season, it's only 8 members that would continue to grow. So, starting with the 2021 lineup, he's Abilene Christian, Tarleton, Stephen F. Austin, Lamar, Purdue A&M, Texas Southern, Houston Baptist, and Cardinate Word. 2022, Texas A&M Commerce will now be moving up from D2 Lone Star into the FCS. And by 2024, UT Rio Grande Valley plans to have their football program up and running. So, just time will tell if that actually happens, but if they do, they'll be placed here. Next is the Southland, right there in that Mississippi Delta region. You have Central Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Grambling, Northwestern State, McNeese State, Southern, Nichols, and Southeast Louisiana, as well as Alcorn State, Jackson State, and Mississippi Valley State. Now, we'll kind of concede that Southland and the SWAC names part could be interchanged because of the members in those particular conferences, as majority of the My Southland Conference is currently SWAC schools. So I can concede that those two could be switched, but I kept it that way because you think of Southwest, you think of Texas. Next up is Ohio Valley Conference. With this conference, you have the name Ohio. You might have schools from Ohio. Thus, Dayton and Youngstown State are added. You also bring in Valparaiso, Butler, and Indiana State, as well as Eastern Kentucky, Morehead State, Murray State, UT Martin, Austin Peay, Tennessee State, Tennessee Tech, East Tennessee State, and Chattanooga. SoCon be right down there in the Alabama, Georgia, Florida area. So you have North Alabama, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Sanford, Florida A&M, Stetson, Bethune-Cookman, Mercer, and Kennesaw State. Next, we get the MEAC right there with the Carolinas. And so you start off with the Citadel, Charleston Southern, South Carolina State, Presbyterian, Wofford, Furman, Western Carolina, Gardner-Webb, Davidson, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, Campbell, and Elon. Next is the Colonial. You sit there with VMI, Richmond, William & Mary, Hampton, Norfolk State, Howard, Georgetown, Townsend, Morgan State, Delaware State, and Monmouth. Now, I know Monmouth doesn't really fit with this mold of this conference, but because of the conference I want to put them into, we put that conference at 15, had to put them somewhere. So it's between the Colonial and what will be my Northeast, so I went more Colonial. But I will kind of see Monmouth Prior should be somewhere else. Next up is the Patriot League, pretty much right there in New York and Pennsylvania. You got Robert Morris, Duquesne. Sorry, when I see that one, I don't want to say Duquesne, but that's how you pronounce it. St. Francis, Bucknell, Lehigh, Lafayette, Villanova, Colgate, Albany, Marist, Fordman, Wagner, Long Island, and Stony Brook. Now, I can see that Monmouth should really be in this conference, but it'll take them up, and I would not be able to, and because my other guideline to put in place is I would not separate states out of the conference, so I wouldn't. Technically, I probably would take Colgate, Albany, and move them out of this conference, put them in the Northeast, so I could put Monmouth in here, but because I don't want to separate New York, so that's kind of how that kind of fell into place. And then speaking of the Northeast, the remainder of the FCS schools, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Merrimack, Bryant, Holy Cross, Sacred Heart, and Central Connecticut. Well, that was the FCS. Now it's time for the FBS level. And once again, start out west and start with the Pac-12. Pretty much what the Pac-12 pretty much is. And I just stuck with the states on the Pacific Coast. So Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, Stanford, UCLA, USC, also brought in San Jose State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Hawaii. Then you have the Mountain West. Now with this one, Nevada and UNLV, I put them out west, but I could actually put them probably in the Pac-12. That could make sense as well. So those two schools I could see go either way, but I put them here. They joined with the other members of Boise, Utah State, Utah, BYU, Wyoming, Colorado State, Colorado, Air Force, New Mexico State, Arizona, and Arizona State. Next up, this is the rebranded Conference USA, aka the American West. As it's all Texas, So you get UTEP, which technically probably should be in the Mountain West, but because it's in Texas, I didn't want to separate from the rest of Texas. Texas Tech, North Texas, TCU, SMU, Baylor, Texas, Texas State, UTSA, Texas A&M, Rice, Houston, and Sam Houston. Next is the Big 12. Big 12 is a lot of schools that you probably recognize from the original Big 8. And it kind of went a little different direction. So you got Nebraska, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Missouri, and Iowa State. You also brought in Tulsa, Arkansas State, Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So those three have those rivalries with each other. So you just bring that over. Then the Big 10, definitely not what you normally see with the Big 10, but I think this kind of makes sense. Kind of keep these schools somewhat close together. So let's start off right up there north, work our way south. So Northern Illinois, Northwestern, Notre Dame, Purdue, Ball State, Illinois, Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Memphis, Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee, and Tennessee. That's right, Tennessee will lose their games with Florida and Alabama. That'll be non-conference matchups. And then the MAC is just between these two states. You got Michigan State, along with Eastern Central and Western Michigans. Toledo, Bowling Green, Akron, Kent State, Ohio, Miami, Ohio, Cincinnati, and Ohio State. Next up is the Sun Belt. Also right there, that middle Gulf Coast region, you get Louisiana Monroe, Louisiana Tech, LSU, Tulane, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss, Alabama, Auburn, UAB, Troy, South Alabama, and Jacksonville State. Next up is the SEC. And you'll get South Carolina, Clemson, Coastal Carolina, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Florida, Florida State, South Florida, UCF, Miami, Florida Atlantic, and Florida International. The ACC, right there, that mid-Atlantic region in the U.S., you get West Virginia, Marshall, as well as Virginia Tech, Old Dominion, Liberty, James Madison, North Carolina State, Duke, Wake Forest, East Carolina, Charlotte, and Appalachian State. And then the American, finish up there with the rest of the FBS with the Northeast region. So you get to Boston College, UMass, UConn, Syracuse, Buffalo Army, Rutgers, Temple, Penn State, Pitt, Maryland, and Navy. There you go. There's the regionalized setup of each conference. Is it perfect? By no means is it. Could be a few tweaks added in there, for sure. Definitely. I mean, you can split them up more by time zones if you really wanted to. Like I said, put UTEP more in like the Mountain West, where they kind of belong anyways, because the time zone matters. Plus the rivalries with the New Mexico and New Mexico State. But, it's a fun little thought experiment, really, to kind of look at this and see, is it possible? Is it feasible? And looking at this, no, it's not feasible. But, it's just one of these funny scenarios, to kind of see how it works. On paper, it looks, somewhat good if you take away all the history of these programs and how long they've been up and certain levels. So definitely could work for money wise, because they're more regionalized, and you can develop those conference battles closer, because fans can travel easier, especially if you look at those conferences are built in Texas, and they can just drive to these matchups. Okay, if you ever driven Texas, you realize it's a huge state, especially if you're going from El Paso to San Antonio. That's a 3-hour drive. San Antonio up at Dallas is another 3-hour trek. So it's a long drive to travel in Texas, anyways. But it's feasible. You can actually do that. But hey, like I said, it's not a perfect system. Will really work? Not really, because of, like I said, all the other contracts and whatnot, different levels of athletic levels. Because Sam Houston is nowhere in the same footprint as Texas and Texas A&M. nowhere close. But here I got them in the same conference. So, hey, anyhow, enough of me talking on the side of my mouth. Just let me know down below what you think of this. If there's any particular changes you would like to see done. Maybe, like I said, not worry about keeping certain schools and states. Maybe try to keep more what they are basically now, and kind of streamline the conferences a bit. Just let me know down in the comments below. What are some other changes you could have possibly done? While you're there, you can also share the video if you like, especially like this content. And you also subscribe. Once you subscribe, you hit that bell notification, let you know next time I post a video. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.